Rafael Niesten is a serial entrepreneur with 4 successful exits behind him. His most recent venture went on to become the #1 player in his market, PropTech Labs, and grew through a number of acquisitions over a period of 8 years before a huge exit to a US multinational. And at the start of his journey, he had some really interesting advice to share.
Need to be like a one-eyed dog in a meat factory. So I was like,
All founders wonder what to do with themselves once they've had an exit. And for Rafael, he came very close to making what could have been a big mistake.
there was, I think, about 5 or 6 weeks into it, I went and had a look at a small bar. But I thought, oh, that'd be great to have a small bar. But I talked myself off the roof. So I do not have a small bar.
Raf is the master of a great metaphor to bring something to life.
You know, as an entrepreneur and as you go through these stages, you're juggling. You're a juggler. That's basically what you do. But, first you start juggling with balls, and then all of a sudden it's flames, and then all of a sudden it's chainsaws.
He provides a sobering wake-up call for the world in which we live today.
If you're flailing and you're in software, or you're in software as a service, or you're doing something that can be easily replicated with a vibe coder in 4 hours, you are in deep trouble.
Rafael believes in wealth minimalism, and after his big exit event, and once he'd received the check, he really went out and treated himself.
I went to Indian, it cost $62, and I bought 3 USB-C cables that cost $7. That was the extent.
You flash
as bruh. So that was the extent of it. So basically it just goes through, it's like how to run your life like a startup.
He also has some grounding perspectives on wealth with some interesting upside ideas.
Everyone wants to do everything quick, get rich quick, lose weight quick, do all these things quick, but it's just time, and it's boring, and there's no exciting path about getting rich. It takes a long time unless
Rafael Niesten, all the way from Sydney, founder of PropTech Labs. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Josh. It's great to be here. Loving it.
Hey, so we're going to talk about exits, and we'll get into the start and the build journey along the way, of course. But it's been about 9 months since the deal was announced. I know that you were working on it for quite some time leading up to that point in time. But I'm curious, in the here and now, how, if any way, other than not having a job to go to anymore, how has life changed for you since the big exit?
Well, mate, life in the slow lane is what's been ensuing. It's been quite enjoyable not having back-to-back meetings and looking at your calendar on a Sunday night and going, wow, actually, I've got 2 things for the entire week on, rather than I've got 17 double-booked appointments, 1 triple-booked appointment, one there's 5 in there. I don't know how that happened. And then the constant juggle of a day where you start at 6 in the morning, and then you just sit in the chair pretty much talking at a screen until 10, 11 at night time. I recall fondly, well, not really fondly, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the plates associated with those meals on my desk most days, stacked up to take down later on. So life has been very, very peaceful and very quiet. And that's a bit unnerving in the beginning, but like a cold ice bath. When you first get in, it's a bit horrible, but then after you sit there for a while, you sort of get used to it.
Your pitch and pace of your voice, your diction has markedly changed from when we met in Sydney back in 2019. I was living there and you were doing a fundraising round, and you're a million miles an hour, man. And that's very, very common for a founder to be. And so one of the things that I've observed and experienced to a certain extent is that there's a void that opens up, and that space can be quite unnerving for some people. But it sounds as if you've found a really nice rhythm and a nice place in that space. Is that correct?
Think what sort of happens is you have your life is frenetic. There's a pace, and especially when you're running a transaction and you've got hundreds of people working for you and all of these wonderful things all together, you then get to a point where everything is full on, and all of a sudden it's then not. So I resisted the urge, because I've done it every time I've ever exited a business, that within a month or 2, I'm back doing something different. So I banned myself, at least for the first month. So I said, for the entirety of the first month, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to invest in anything. I'm not going to talk to anyone about anything. All I'm going to do is decompress. ride my bike, hit the sauna, do ice bath, try and become normal. And to be frank, it's a sort of akin to someone who's trying to come off some sort of addictive drugs, because you're just sitting there going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What's happening? But once you sort of lean into it a little bit, and then I push that month into 3 months, and then I push that further on, and now there's no extended time frame that I'm setting myself up for. It's just you sort of come into a groove and come into a grind. That being said, you still have to do stuff with your day. You still have to use your brain, be active, etc., because otherwise you go somewhat crazy. And I've heard many a story of people doing exactly that. So I suppose it's just nice to take a different pace and to relax a little, to enjoy life, to enjoy the freedoms that that the wealth brings, and you don't have to then be chained to your desk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And also,
Yeah.
everything when you're running a startup or a scale up or any sort of business, every day there's problems, every day there's drama, every day something's on fire. So you're continuously in fight mode and what's going to happen next and whatever. And now it's like, oh, okay, that doesn't happen. That's not real life. This is
Yes.
real life. This is what life's all about.
Yeah. Mm. It's funny, you refer to being chained to your desk, and the descriptor that you used was "have to be chained to your desk." And so I've written, one of the chapters in my book is, I call it the tyranny of drive, and I allude to it being like a monkey that's on your back that is constantly whipping you. And for people that don't have that drive, they look at those of us that do with envy and, "Oh, you're lucky you're
Uh,
motivated." And I go, "You don't know what this is like, man. Like this is relentless. It doesn't switch off. It doesn't have a slow mode. There's like it's only eighth gear,
yeah.
right? And you just go, go, go the whole time. And you feel compelled as if you have to do it.
Yes, you
And
do.
so that void opening up, which is what you've just talked about, is I've no doubt you've seen the same thing. I've seen people fill that void with either frivolous kind of things, which might be okay for a period of time, but it's ultimately not
Yeah.
satisfying. The worst is when you replace it with some other form of addiction, which might be a chemical or an alcohol. Exercise is okay, but it's still not that
Yeah.
healthy for you. But like a drugism or an alcoholism is certainly not
Yeah.
good for you. Narcissism is another one that some people can get. So I'm really pleased that you found
I'm
happiness in that
not
space.
gonna lie, there was, I think, about 5 or 6 weeks into it, I went and had a look at a small bar that I thought, "Oh, that'd be great to have a small bar." But, I talked myself off the roof, so, I do not have a small bar, and I have no intention of having a small bar. I just thought it'd be something good and social, and you can hang out, and then the reality's dawned upon me that it's another chain to the desk type of a scenario where you've got that responsibility again, and I just gotten rid of that. So I was like, "No, stop." Much to the disappointment of that said bar owner who thought that I was so interested. And I was, to be frank, until I sat back and splashed some cold water on my face and thought, what on earth are you going to do this for?
What are you
Don't
doing?
you dare. Don't
Yeah.
you dare.
Yeah. That is an interesting thing to look at buying as well. Because when you've got lucidity and clarity of thought around something, hospitality businesses
Oh,
are
horrible.
terrible businesses
Absolutely
to own, which
horrible. Absolutely.
right?
I,
Yeah,
I was doing
terrible
it for
hours, the return's terrible.
lifestyle. Let's go to the
Right.
bar. But I think then I would have become an alcoholic based on your previous commentary. I would have just had an unlimited supply of alcohol available to me. So you never know. You never
Right.
know.
And socializing, and your mates would have loved it. They would have been over the moon. Your wife would have been absolutely furious with the whole thing, but your mates would have been like, "Yeah, let's go to Raf's and amazing. Hey, Raf, put it
Yeah,
on my tab." You don't have a fucking
exactly right,
tab.
mate. There would be no tab. Those guys would never pay me back.
Yeah, totally. Hey, so let's go back. I'm always curious as to the starting story, and I know that you kicked off your life and career in kind of radio and events. So I'm really curious. You talked about fighting fires, problem solving. That's the nature of being a CEO. I totally agree with that. You're kind of setting a plan, setting the intention and direction, but things transpire and conspire
Yep.
against you, and so you're kind of constantly resolving those problems. But what did you take? Tell us firstly about what you did in radio and events, because there's an interesting backstory
Yeah.
that's there. And what did you take from that in terms of application to your very successful career as an
Yeah,
entrepreneur?
so I suppose back in the dark old days, I did a scholarship over to Canada in Vancouver at Simon Fraser University, and I was there for 6 months, and, I shared a room with a crazy Danish guy, who we became great mates, and we decided we'd have a radio show on campus, and it was awesome fun. Like, we'd go out, we'd come in drunk, we'd go on air, we'd play our favorite songs. It was great. Like the youth, very youthful. I was still under 18. I was 18, just 18, I think, living in Canada, and the legal limit was 19. So I wasn't supposed to go out, but my first job was printing IDs at the university. So I printed myself one with a different age on it. So anyway, what can I say? Always bending those rules. And
Statute of limitations, we're
correct,
past it
correct.
now, we're
They're
good.
finished, mate. I wish I could say it was only 10 years ago, but my face tells a different story. Albeit I could just have a startup face. One never knows these things. So me and my friend, we had a radio show. We loved it. It was great fun. We played tracks we loved. People listened in. They called up. We thought it was awesome. So when I came back, I was living in Perth at the time, Western Australia, and tried to get on radio. And because I was only a young guy, I had no chance. They all kept saying, too young, no experience, not interested.
Hey, it's Josh. Thanks for listening to the show. When founders talk about the dream exit, they're really talking about freedom. Freedom to choose how to use their time and to decide what comes next. I'm a client of JB Ware in New Zealand, and I know this is what sets them apart. They help entrepreneurs and leaders turn success into significance. A great exit isn't just about the commas in your bank account. It's about what those commas enable you to create. Two Commas is proudly partnered with JB Ware, helping founders by putting their wealth to work for generations.
So I thought, why don't I just build my own radio station? So it just happened that I was looking at the right place at the right time, and they had a community radio license. So we applied for it, me and a couple of friends, and we got the license from 3 p.m. till 3 a.m. and then eventually full time. And we grew that into a monster by simply listening to what people wanted. We were built by the youth for the youth. So we had this wonderful concept where people would just call up and say, hey, I want to play this song. And we played dance music and R&B and rap, and none of the commercial stations were playing it. All they were playing was the same dregs over and over and over again, and people were disenfranchised with it. So other FM, which was on the rating survey, I think was about 0.1 of 1%. And then it started to go up, and then over 10%, and then it just disappeared off the ratings altogether because we were bigger than the commercial radio stations. And we'd paid $120 for our license, and they'd paid 25, 30, 40, $50 million for their licenses. So you can imagine that didn't go down so well. So it spent a long time fighting the Broadcasting Authority and one of the radio stations that we all know now is Nova. DMG was their parent company. And basically they directed this investigation. So I learned a lot really quickly, very early 20s, and I was sitting in front of a Queen's Council, the General Council, and the board members, the chair of the Broadcasting Authority. And I learned that they were the judge, jury, and executioner at the time. So it was a very interesting experience from a young 20-odd-year-old who just wanted to play cool music and had receipts in a shoebox to being interrogated for days on end by very powerful people. So a lot of learnings came from that. And obviously, there was a lot of spin-offs, events company that I had all spun off from there. But the radio station was amazing. It was probably the best thing, and will probably be the best thing I've ever done, because it was just so much fun. We had at one point, I think, more than 300 youth volunteers that came to the station, played their music, did all the bits and pieces, and a lot of them have gone on to television, radio, filmmaking, etc. So a lot of them credit their start to the station, which was really cool, and we really enjoyed it. And because of that, I won all these awards and was the finalist for Young Australian of the Year and all sorts of wonderful things that happened as a result. But that wasn't the purpose of it. There was a lot of learnings that came out of that. How to do things better, how to be more organized, how to have governance, how to not have things in a shoebox with receipts, etc. So a lot of learnings that forged my life moving forward and really framed the entrepreneurial journey from that humble beginning at the radio station.
Yeah, great story. So how did it end? Were you shut down in the end by the Broadcasting
No, what
Authority?
happened was they couldn't find anything of significance. So what they did is, in summary, they said that we weren't serving the needs of the youth of Perth, which was complete garbage because we had 300 plus volunteers, and they just didn't like the way I'd run it because I was running it like a commercial enterprise, and it should have been like most traditional community radio stations, which have no funding and no sponsorships and no ability to get listenership. They're just token license, whereas I actually commercialized it. So I decided it was time for me to move on because I didn't want to jeopardize the radio station by me being there. And, they were out for my head basically because they could see I was the driver in all of it. And then I told the team that took over, I said, just keep fighting because at the end of the day, you guys will win. They put some license conditions on, etc. And then they basically, went to them and said, oh, look, we want to work with you guys. This is the Broadcasting Authority. We want to work with you guys. Don't take us to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. Just work with us. And then eventually they found more breaches because the license conditions were onerous and then took the license away from them. So it was disappointing, all in all, because the station was great. And now it's an old person's radio station, so probably more aligned to my style these days. I'm not so much into the rap and honestly intense music these days as
You aren't? I still am. I still love it. I love everything these days. Listen to classical during the day,
there you
but
go.
then, rap and techno and trance and whatever if I'm working out.
You've got to have
Yeah,
the cranking
yeah.
workout music. That's part of it.
Yeah,
But
totally.
unfortunately, that was
Totally.
all gone. And but the legacy lives on in the people that work there, and it was really fun. It was a fun experience. I really enjoyed that. Just all the cool things that came out of it, all the cool people we interviewed and people we had at the station, and the main thing was the events that we held. And this is where everything went downhill because although we were winning in the ratings, we held our first or second event. I can't remember which one it was, but we held an event at a nightclub in Perth that holds around about 3,500 people. We were full within half an hour, and there was a line that went for about 1.5 kilometers down the street of people trying to get in. So it sort of legitimized it. And it was really funny. The first day we turned the transmitter on and we started broadcasting. We had one CD and we just kept playing over and over again. I remember Sophie Ellis Bextor, Murder on the Dance Floor. I'll never forget that song because I heard it about 8,000 million times, and then it became famous.
Wow. Must be burned into your brain. Catchy
catchy
tune,
tune.
but hard to get
Very
rid of.
hard. And then we said, if anyone's listening, because we had no idea, if anyone's listening, this was before internet and Spotify and all these things, so people didn't have streaming, and if they did, it was like the Pirate Bay and those sorts of Napster, those sorts of things where they stole music. We said, if anyone's listening, just give us a call and ask us if you want to play a song. And said the phone number, and then the phone rang. And we're like, oh, this is weird. And then the phone rang again and again. And all of a sudden, it just kept ringing. And it was the most bizarre thing to build this radio station from nothing. And then we had to try and work out where to get some CDs from because we can't play the same crap music over and over again in the very early days.
Yes.
Fun.
Hey, so I've got a premise. I'll explain my view on this, and then I'll ask you a question at the back end of it. So I believe that there are types of CEO that are appropriate for different ages and stages of a business, and it also aligns with the character set and the behavior of the CEO. And so what you were talking about there is someone that's a start-build person. So the start-build person identifies an opportunity. They get a product, minimum viable product, typically out into the market. They get the early adopter customers. They're guerrilla-like in their tactics. They work super, super hard. They're prepared to, if necessary, cut corners, staying inside legislation typically because you don't want to expose yourself, but they'll just get things done, right? Move fast and break things would be the mantra of that kind of person. Then you've got the scale person. So that person is probably the 1 to 10 or maybe 1 to 50, if we're putting it into revenue terms kind of person. They'll start to bring systems, processes, repeatability, and some measures to the business as well. And so they'll be, kind of scale, but with a reasonable kind of awareness of what the costs and the consequences of all the different methods of scaling are. Then you've got a change person. So that person will be brought in if typically the business started to flatline, or if the expenses have gotten out of line with the income, or the business needs to pivot to some other space, and they'll be the person that comes in to look at getting rid of some assets, getting rid of some people, rationalizing the business, all that sort of stuff. And then you've got an exit person, and that's a person that's a storyteller who understands about building networks and relationships with potential buyers. They know about how to articulate the proposition of the business. They're a very good strategic thinker, all that sort of thing. So very, very rarely have I seen people that can sit across each of those four things. They might kid themselves that they can. Like me, for example, I'm a great start build person and I'm a reasonable scale person. I've had to become an exit person. I'm not a change person whatsoever. Since exiting my last business, I started to field a whole bunch of calls from people. And when you scratched under the surface, what they actually wanted was a change CEO, someone to come in and rip the business apart because, we've stalled at 5 million or 10 million or whatever the number is of revenue. And we're stuck there for a couple of years and the board says we need to change. And I'm like, that could be the worst job in the whole world to me. And I'm not the right guy for doing that job. So that was a bit of awareness what you hope to get as you get a bit older. So that's my premise. And so you probably at the start of your career were therefore probably likely under that model, a start and build person. But with PropTech Labs, you had to then kind of make that shift and that move into the person that could occupy those other things. To what extent was that like a conscious awareness for you? The two-part question. To what extent was that a conscious awareness for you? It may not have been. But what did you do to be able to fill in those skill gaps that came up as you moved through into like the more well-rounded, holistic CEO
Yeah.
kind of position?
I think the way someone described me is a Swiss Army knife. So I just have a use. I seem to be able to find something to fix every situation. My preference has always been start build. I'm a builder. I love to build things. I love to get an idea. I love to get it out in the market. I love to watch customers use it. And yeah, the money part, whatever, I don't really care. It's never really excited me. I don't really give too much concern to it. But I love that building phase. But the problem is you can't just be a builder. You can't just be one of those four things because at the end of the day, I think you need to have experience across everything because you start with being that embryonic company that nobody's heard of and it's rough and tumble and you're cutting corners and you're pushing the limits and you're breaking things and you're trying to fix them and you're getting to a point where it's like, wow, this is really cool. I love this. Then you hit that scale part and then you go, okay, well, I need to hire people. I need to have systems. I need to revamp my processes and you try and put good people around you that do that stuff. But if you just focus on that start build phase, you'll never get to the exit stage because start build is not exciting to people that have money. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't prove anything. There's no finger on a pulse and there's no money. The vast majority of venture capital and private equity run all these horrible formulas and quality of earnings and all this crap that you've never heard of. And as a start build person, you've got no interest in. You just want to build something that's cool. And, if you're making money, great. I mean, some people obviously do it because they want to make money, etc. Whatever everyone's motivation is. Then you get to that point where it starts to become what someone called once hygiene, where you're just dealing with these crappy hygiene issues. Well, I hate it. Like I do not enjoy it at all. So I generally put people in to do it. I'm not very good with, my dog's sick and I can't come to work today and I wasn't able to finish this and I don't like the excuses. I get frustrated very easy because I just want to get the job done. My mindset is always start build, but I can go across those things. I've done the change management stuff. I've pivoted where things have failed in other businesses. And I've done multiple exits. I think 4 of them I've done. So I've been across the spectrum, but I still love the start build more than anything else because it's the fun time. It's the time where you've got nothing to worry about. You've got no cares in the world. Your run rate's not there. Investors aren't breathing down your neck. There's no pressure. You just want to build cool shit. That's what you want to do. I love that. That's my favorite. The other stuff I can do, but I really don't like it. The exit stuff is fun though, to a degree. Like, 5 months of due diligence with giant US corporates has not really been an enjoyable experience, I wouldn't say, but it was good to run the gauntlet. We bought 3 companies and then we sold our company. So it was much of a muchness. And I ran the whole process myself. We didn't have an advisor aside from legal and financial. So I did the whole thing myself. We used them in the past and found them to be inadequate and the service offering was limited and they have 50,000 other things that they're doing. You're just one. A lot of the times they didn't show up to meetings. They didn't understand what the business was. And I ended up doing all the work anyway and paid their money. So lesson learned. The Swiss Army knife is back, baby. That's how we roll.
Yeah, I get it. I think that's a really apt description. Funnily enough, I've had that used with my own skill set as well. And I think as you evolve in your career, you either need to be able to what is it, a mile wide and inch deep across a whole bunch of different across a whole bunch of different things. As an entrepreneur, I reckon that's a critical thing to be able to master, as opposed to an individual contributor, which is that you probably want to be an inch wide, a mile deep, to become a specialist and to become the best in your industry at what you do, and therefore really crank up the economic rent that you can see as an experience. But I think the worst business experiences that I've seen where things have gone awry for a founder, something critical has gone off track, a critical initiative or a program of work has gone off track. It's when they've abdicated and they've gone too far away from that
Correct.
piece of work, and consequently they're not in touch with the change requirements that are there, what the people element of that change is, the metrics they need to kind of follow through and keep an eye on. And so then they don't lose control. That's the wrong description. It's more that they lose visibility and understanding of what's going on, and then they're kind of living in the dark. You think about Elon as being, a divisive character, but I respect him as an entrepreneur, highest value creating entrepreneur of our generation by some metric. And so, if you've read books about him, which no doubt
Yep.
you have, then you get that he knows how the rockets work. He knows what the boosters do. He's found alternative to parts for those things. He understands thermodynamics and physics, and so he's a freak, obviously, right down to that level. But I think you've got to have that mentality. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
what
no,
I
I
just said
agree
there,
with you.
Ralph?
I think that's very valid. I mean, you've got to have your finger on the pulse, and it's all good for you to be sitting there and
Yeah,
sitting at the board level and making directions to people. But if you don't know what the business does, how do you stop? How do you make change? How do you understand when things are going off? And I think, as an entrepreneur and as you go through these stages, you're juggling. You're a juggler. That's basically what you do. But, first you start juggling
yeah,
with balls, and then all of a sudden it's flames, and then all of a sudden it's chainsaws. So, if you take your
pencils.
eye off, if you make a mistake, it can be fatal very, very quickly. So you're consistently juggling. There's always something up in the air you've got to continuously catch. And if you fail to do so, then it's very, very problematic very, very quickly. And I've seen it time and time again where businesses, there's been a founder who's, in the business, growing the business and says, I've had enough, don't want to sell it. I'll just put a CEO in. CEOs don't really have that ability to do all of those different things. They might be one of those four that you mentioned, and the whole thing starts to go backwards. And, you end up with a lot of problems where we've abdicated and you've gone off and done something else. Or, you're bored. Entrepreneurs, we're chasing things. What's the next shiny object? Where do we go from here? What's going on? And I remember there's a guy called David Shane, who's a venture capital bloke. OIF is his venture capital fund in Sydney, and he sold his company in 2000 to, it was called Dimension Data, for more than $1 billion. So he's got a great foundation. And I was talking to him one day, we were having a conversation, talking about where we were going, what we're doing, and how we had this PropTech business and how excited we were. But we also had this software business that we were looking to do stuff with. And he said, and he's South African, so forgive me, anyone who's South African, but he said, Ref, you need to be like a one-eyed dog in a meat factory. And I'll just note that. You need to be like a one-eyed dog in a meat factory. So I was like, I thought about it. I thought, whatever, man. And then I left and I thought, you know what? He's bloody right. So we focused all our energy and effort on the thing that we were doing rather than go, oh, we've got this here and we've got this here, which is the entrepreneur's curse, chasing the shiny object that when you get down the rabbit hole isn't so shiny anymore. And you realize you've lost where you were. You've lost your way. You've lost the ability to do what you're doing. And it is a curse because you see all these opportunities. The reality is it's harder to say no than it is to say yes, but you just have to say no. You need to go, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to focus on what I want to do. Here is my plan. This is what it is. Because if you're looking here, there, and everywhere, that's a big curse, but it can also be the end of what you're doing. To be honest, it can also make you something too. So, there's no sure hard and fast rules in this daily grind that you're doing where you're throwing bits and pieces. You're like a wizard mixing the cauldron. You're putting a bit of this and a bit of that. Hopefully it doesn't blow up in your face, but it's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I agree with that. Michael Porter tells us that strategy is the art of omission. And so when I'm going through strategy creation work with people that I work with, essentially I start the day by saying that this is the things that we're going to, the plans we incept are where we're going to be directing our efforts for the next 12 months or so. And so that means that we're not going to be doing anything else. And they get commitment again at the end of the day. And then inevitably, always, entrepreneurial thinkers within typically 6 at the earliest, but 12 weeks is around about the time frame. They're like, I'm just thinking about opening a different branch in a different, and I'm like, well, hold on. We decided on a digital first strategy and everything that we're doing is oriented towards that. And this is the cornerstone of how we're going to be building the business. How does this line up with that? And then they kind of give a good reason because that's what they've justified in
Yes.
their own head, but it becomes another
Yeah.
distraction, right? And so I
It's
totally
just
get
like
it.
it's
It's
just like the
interesting
person that
because
says, the total addressable market's 7 billion people, and all I need is 1% of that 7 billion people. It's not possible to
I
achieve
hate
it.
that.
It makes me
I
laugh
hate
every
that.
time.
Really
But
annoys the hell
I've
out of
done
me.
this so many
Yeah,
times.
I
You need to add about 7,000 zeros in front of that one, and that's what market percentage you might get if you are completely lucky and all your cards are like.
exactly. I couldn't agree more. Hey, so here's a question for you just about that dialogue that we just had. So if one is an entrepreneur, and the people that consume this show are largely in that category, about half of them are, and they're grappling with a pivot opportunity, or they've not seen the growth inside their business that they would like to be able to see, what are some methods that you would use to enable them to calibrate properly to go, should we double or triple down on the thing that we're doing, or what should we do to examine what other opportunities could be present for us and go, is a deviation from this plan or this path the right thing for us to do? How do
Well, it
you
depends
approach
how
that?
deep you are in on the business, right? So it's a bit of a loaded question in the sense that people will have different points and different inflection points, different depths that they're in. So if they're venture backed, for example, the venture people are going to say, well, you need to stay the course because this is what we've given you the money for. If they've got a board and the board are conservative, they've got their own agenda. So it depends wholly and solely on the circumstance. You're a solo entrepreneur. Do you have partners? How much of the business do you own? What control do you have? So there's a whole heap of factors that even before that comes into play has to be discussed and decided. But once you've gone through those mechanics, you've really got to take a look at the numbers. The numbers are the most important thing. And a lot
Mm.
of people don't focus on the numbers, or they say, oh, we could do better here, or we could do this, or we could change this. And I used to work with a guy that we co-founded a business together, and he was very much like that. And he wanted to pivot. He wanted to change. He wanted to expand the service offering when we didn't even have the first part of it built properly. And we really needed to exploit that. So we had a significant difference of opinion, and I decided that it was time for me to leave. And I took my money and they paid me, and I said, thank you very much. And it was done, and I exited, and I was very happy with that. And they went down the path that I didn't advocate for. And about a year and a bit later, he was kicked out of the business because he borrowed a lot of money to build something that didn't actually work and wasn't needed and didn't make any sense, but to him it did. So I think you got to consider all of the options in relation to where you get to that point, because sometimes things won't work. And I'll give you, like, when we started Bricks and Agent, which is part of the PropTech Labs that we sold, we hit COVID and we were burning 150 grand a month of our own money. Like, we paid everyone. We didn't skimp. We didn't reduce people's pay. We couldn't sell anything. We had no growth at all for months and months and months and on end, and no income coming in because our model at the time was on the jobs. So the number of jobs that completed, we got paid. Those jobs were non-existent, but we kept pushing on, and we did get to that point, and we sat down and said, is this worth continuing on? So we said, all right, let's do it. Another 3 or 4 months. Let's give it everything we got. Let's push as hard as we can. Let's do everything. And then all of a sudden, COVID fog haze lifted, and we absolutely launched. Like, the platform went completely crazy because there was such a huge backlog of maintenance requests that there was no systems that were working in a way that ours worked that could coordinate all of that activity. So we went from, absolutely flatline to hyperbaric growth in a very, very short period of time. And if we'd pulled the pin or we'd pivoted, we would never have experienced it. So sometimes you just got to ride it out. You got to push, you got to run the course. It's like those ultra marathon runners. You just got to have a bit more gas in the tank, and you just got to keep running. But at other times, you've got to think, well, I've run as far as I can run, and I either need to go and do something else, or change my idea, or pivot, or do whatever needs to be done. and then continue on in a different direction, or stop, go back to the beginning and start training again and do something different. But it's all circumstantial and there's no silver bullet. And this is the unfortunate reality. No one can sit there and say, well, you should do this and you should do that, because nobody knows what's going to happen in 3 or 6 months. Look at all these startups now that are being destroyed overnight with OpenAI and Anthropic. Destroyed, years of work, and now it's free as part of a plan. Business done. I mean, the rate of exponential growth now in startup and AI, it's so hard and so fast. And thankfully, I got out in a time where this wasn't happening. I knew this was coming. I didn't realize it would be here so quickly. But this is the other thing. Time is of the essence these days. Like if you're flailing and you're in software, or you're in software as a service, or you're doing something that can be easily replicated with a vibe coder in 4 hours, you are in deep trouble. I mean, or you look at Atlassian. It's down 85% off its peak. It's off the NASDAQ top 100 now, which is unbelievable, and has been replaced by SanDisk, who are making memory chips, and who went from $33 a share to $950 a share over the last year, because people are buying these memory cards and things like that. This is an old company that's just done the same shit. So the point I'm trying to make is the market is moving so quick. You have to be a quick decision maker now, and whether that's continue and push on, or pull back, or change, or pivot, or do whatever you've got to do. It's more complicated now than it has ever been, and I'd suggest it's going to get more and more complex, especially in the software space, moving forward with everything that's happening at the moment. It's scary for those people out there that have built these businesses. Really, really scary, in my view.
Yeah, I get it and agree. It actually reinforces the case for you to actually go and buy that
Yeah,
bar,
well,
Raf.
I'll do later,
So,
man. I'm off to go get a drink. See ya.
yeah, that's right. I'm to go and do some
That's
product
right.
testing. So,
Keep it up. Yeah, I'll
I
pick up beers, mate.
what
I'll
I
go from one beer to another. I'm not sure which beer worked out well.
that market should be stable. Probably going to
I think
increase in
it's going to
demand.
increase, mate.
Yeah, I agree. So what I tend to do is establish the most important driving metrics for your business, leading and lagging, and then have a hypothesis as to what it is that we are endeavoring to impact, spend some money, make a change, whatever that thing is, and then feverishly focus on those metrics. Is that kind of your mentality? And you were probably focused on customer acquisition and then revenue through platform. Is that what you were doing during
Yeah,
COVID?
well, I mean, I'm more of a product person, so I'm focused on how do I make this product better? How do I get better product market fit? My view on the metrics is, if you've got a good pricing model, you'll make the money eventually. I'm not as methodical from a strategic perspective. I come up with an idea and then I just
Right.
want to run. So I'll run and I'll break all these things and I'll fix them, and I'll go out and talk to people and, try and be as charismatic as possible, bring them along the journey, listen to what they have to say, build stuff that makes sense. That's for the greater good. Never build anything that's bespoke, because then you have to support something that only one person will use, and just build. So I'm product focused. The metrics obviously come, but that's normally not something I'm overly interested in. And, I've been chastised with board members for years and years about, well, what was the return on investment of this particular product build that you did? I don't know. I don't give a shit. I just built it. It'll come later on. It'll come. I'm more blasé in relations with those sorts of metrics, because I'm a builder. I'm that builder. Look, I can read financial. I've got good financial literacy, but it is boring. To me, it is boring. I want to know why, Josh, you're not using this functional feature, or, hey, if I put this here, what will happen to your life? When you've got people that work in property management, or we had an invoicing platform called Invoice Automate. We built from nothing, right? It was just an idea in my head, and 3 months later, we built that product. I had people coming up to me, hugging me, going, "You've changed my life. You've revolutionized the way I do work. I used to spend 2 days doing this. Now it takes me 5 minutes. I can't believe it," etc. That to me is the metrics I'm excited about. How do I make people happy? That
Right.
doesn't always happen. People hate change. Change is hard. And some people don't like that, and they're scared that you're going to take their job or whatever's going to happen. But my metric that I get most excited about is the happiness metric, how happy these people are that they now use this particular piece of technology, and how much better their life is as a result of that.
Yeah, get it. Kevin Kelly talks about 1,000 raving fans, and making sure that you know who those people could be, and then appeal and appease those people as quickly and as regularly as you possibly
Definitely.
can. So about those early days of Bricks and Agent, and that was the product that we first kind of met through you raising money for. You felt the problem as a property investor. How did you then test that early examples of it? So you've talked about getting joy from your customers and that sort of stuff, but how did you go
Yeah.
through that journey, and that others could be
It
helpful
was
for
a
others to
highly
understand?
complex one because maintenance, we thought, oh, this is pretty straightforward. Someone's got a problem, they send it to a trade, the trade fixes it, and then the property manager goes tick. But there was literally thousands of workflows that we had to build out for it to be a product that people could use. And, we worked with a number of agencies and they said, yeah, this is awesome. And then we get more agencies and then say, where's this feature? Where's that feature? What's going on with this? There was an incumbent at the time called Maintenance Manager, which we ended up acquiring many years later because we started to acquire a lot of their customers by virtue of the fact that our platform was superior. But it took years to get it right, years and years to get it right. And, hundreds of people and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to a point where it was usable. We were targeting a market that was really complex because we had to build software for tenants, for owners, for service providers or tradies, and for the property manager, and then all the interactions that happen between there. And then you've got strata, you've got insurance, you've got warranty jobs, you've got jobs that are over an owner approval threshold. You've got tenants that put jobs that don't relate to anything that the owner actually has to do in some cases, like cockroaches. You got legislation from different states that says state certain time frame. So there's all of these things that are under the hood. And it's most likely the reason why there wasn't an abundance of people competing with us, because it was a pain in the ass. And, the property management software, they had a rudimentary solution that was scratching the surface of basic, if that. So we found it, but it took a bloody long time. And everyone we spoke to, we ended up having to build more features and more platforms as infrastructure and more bits and pieces that connected, more integrations, etc. Because we integrated into different software. So then there was complexity with that. So it was a very difficult, very, very difficult platform to build, a very difficult platform to maintain, and continues to be so because people all do something different. There's no structured way in doing it. So it's very hard. Like the whole thing is extremely hard. The way that particular Bricks and Agent platform, and it gave us a competitive moat, and we had by the end of it one competitor, and that was it. And we were the market leader by a country mile, albeit they kept telling everyone they were the market leader, but that wasn't true. But I wish them all well now because I'm not in the space, so everyone's happy and it's great hands
Good luck.
and
Yes.
done. But everyone's running something different. Everyone's doing something different. Everybody's got to get feedback from different places. But for us, it was highly complex stuff. I mean, we even went on Shark Tank to get some free PR, which was pretty cool. Um,
Yeah. What did you learn about investors as a result of
Oh,
going on
Shark
Shark
Tank was
Tank?
just a reality TV show, mate. That's all that really was. But it was free
Yeah. Right.
PR.
Yeah.
I knew some people that went on it the
Yeah.
year before, and they said, "You should go on. It's great PR." And I said, "Cool." And John, my business partner, loves going in front of crowds. No, he doesn't really hate it. It's his absolute worst hate. And we went and did it, our pitch before it all happened to see if they were interested, because software is really not something you see on it. It's not something that's regular. But they liked what we had to say. Then we had to see a psychiatrist to make sure we weren't going to do self-harm if we didn't get a deal on TV. Yeah, so it was an hour session. John was extremely surprised that I passed because he thought I was going to fail that particular exercise. And then the morning of, we were supposed to go into Fox Studios. I was sick as a dog. I was so sick. I had the man flu. And as you can appreciate as a man, it's the terrible affliction that
Bad
affects only
news.
males. Um, Horrible, horrible thing. And I rang them. I said, "Look, I'm not feeling well." And they said, "Well, if you don't come today, you're out because this is our last day of filming." So it's okay. Picked up John. I could see him pacing up and down. They said, "Make sure you're there by 9 o'clock sharp, Fox Studios in Sydney." Got there at 9 o'clock sharp. And I was basically waiting. We were waiting till about 5:30 before we got on. So I was sleeping on the floor, lying on the table. They gave us some nice mystery meat with rice. for lunch, which I didn't eat. I don't know what it was. It was grey and terrible looking. And then they moved us from one room into a tent, and I was fading fast. So I ate an entire packet of Tim Tams that was sitting there, just one after another, just for the sugar hit. And then they brought us finally in about 5:30, and they were, back and forward and talking to them. And they wanted me to do this, showing the money symbol with my fingers. And I said, there's no way I'm doing that, because if we don't get a deal, I'm going to look like a dick. Anyway, I thought they'd stop filming. So I did the symbol to John. I was like, I'm not going to do that. What featured in the show, me doing that. And then you walk in and out, in and out, in and out. And then you go into the shark area, and you stand on the little X, and it's silent for about 90 seconds. And everyone's just looking at you. There's all these camera people and everything, and the sharks. And then they go. And then you talk. And we were there for an hour and 20 talking. And you can see, if you ever watch the clip on YouTube, you can see my hands consistently moving. That was the sugar coursing through my veins from the whole packet of Tim Tams, because I was sugar high. It was getting out there. We did a deal on air, and that actually helped us with our business, because we had one of the people that watched the show was the CFO of the company that we were trying to integrate with. And he thought, well, if these guys like it, it must be good. So that's how we got our real start from that stupid reality TV show. We did an on-air deal with Andrew Banks, who was one of the sharks. We never did it in real life, because it's all subject to due diligence. But years later, when we did the raise, he came in, I think it was about 36 times more than the valuation that he offered us on the show that he paid for. So we got the shark in the end, but it was on our terms. So there you go.
Gold.
Good fun.
Gold.
Sorry,
What a great
that wasn't really part of the question, but you know what?
No.
It was a fun story nonetheless.
Yeah, no, it's a fun story. I love it. So you, as a part of the growth of your business, you decided to buy some businesses along the way. And so, there's a bit of a mantra that does exist, and it's not entirely true, but there is some credence to it, which is that the value for the business is often not able to be realized by the acquirer, right? So why did you buy businesses, and how did you go through the process of evaluating them?
So if you look at those 4 CEO hats, we run all of those all the time. And we looked at the businesses we looked at were strategically important to us, because we realized we were only going to grow so big with maintenance. Like, there's only so many people that need maintenance software. It's not for every single person. If you're managing 50 properties or 100 properties, you don't need us. So we thought we got to get something that's more brand building and more give us the ability to grow across verticals in what we're doing and stitch them all together. So we were fortunate. We had more than 100 people in our development team. So we were able to run at speed, albeit the team was pretty burnt out after 18 months of 3 acquisitions in a row. And the first one was maintenance manager. They were a competitor, and we basically imported all of the data that we had, that they had, into our platform, and it was maintenance. So we grew the business significantly as a result of that acquisition. Then, literally while we were still in the throes of that acquisition, I rang one of the people I knew at Inspection Manager, which was the market-leading inspection software. And I'd had a number of chats with him over the years and said, we're interested, and if the time's right. And I rang the lady, Carrie, and I said to her, I just want to let you know, before the market we're buying, we just acquired Maintenance Manager. I'd love to have a conversation with you about how we can do the same, because maintenance and inspections are pretty self-populating. So if you do an inspection, you find maintenance issues, that fills the maintenance platform. You connect the 2 platforms together, and happy days. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, buying that business. Not the purchase, that was pretty simple, but the business itself and the technology were left in a way that was not very good. So, the tech was pretty backwards. The finances were in a dire straits. It was not a great business, but we got it for a great price. And we thought it was going to be about 3 months, but we spent about 9 months rewriting, integrating, changing services, understanding the platform, understanding the code, fixing stuff that just should have never been broken, and then putting that all together. But it meant we had a really strong proposition where we had maintenance and inspections And then we built our invoicing platform. So we had maintenance, invoicing, inspections. We built a key management platform. And then we acquired another business, which was called Rental Heroes, which was basically dying and had a couple of months of life left. So we picked that up for a very good price, good customer base that came with it. And then we cross-sold and upsold all of those different platforms to all of the different people. So synergizing it, getting the right people in there, stripping out the costs that were making completely no sense. Some of the decisions, the financial decisions weren't great in a lot of the businesses that we had acquired. And the technology in some cases was very, very behind. But they were market leaders in their space, and it just made for a logical play for us. Had we not purchased those different platforms, we wouldn't have been in a position to exit because we weren't big enough for what our acquirer was looking for, because we were then able to solve all of these different pain points that they had with these specialist point solutions that we had either built or acquired. And that was the selling point of what made sense, because they could integrate these particular platforms and provide a better experience off the shelf to customers that they were trying to attain, both here and around the world.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Bit of a classic playbook for acquisition. So you look at where you're playing a likely potential acquirer, and then the gaps that you have as a consequence of going that would be of appeal to people, because that's probably what would
Yeah.
appeal to you. And then do we build that thing and then go through the grind and the pain of trying to win against the leading incumbent, or do we just buy them and make them an offer they can, is going to make it worth their while to head out the door. So that makes perfect sense. So when did the talk start with MRI Software? So they were your ultimate acquirer. 7th of October 2025 was when the news hit. Obviously, you'd been doing the deal for a long time before that. But when did the talk start and how? You mentioned that you didn't have an investment banker. So did you pick up the phone and call these guys and go, hey, we've got a great asset? Or what happened?
We ended up, because of those acquisitions, so it's quite serendipitous. We ended up, because of the acquisition, as MRI's biggest partner globally. So we were their largest partner by revenue anywhere in the world, and they have some huge partners. So, we provided a huge revenue stream for them, and we'd had discussions over the years, and they'd reached out, and their corporate development people reached out, and they had a chat. And, it's I suppose the way you can put it, it's like if you're a guy and you like a girl, they tend not to like you back, but if you don't like the girl, they tend to like you more. So we played that scenario out quite well to our advantage. So we had a number of conversations over the years. There was always conversation. We wanted, let's look to talk. And we sort of said, oh, thank you so much, but no, thank you. It's like the guy who's asking the girl out. Over time, you say, okay, well, we're ready to have a chat. But they'd reached out again, and we said, look, we'll sort of have a chat, And they're obviously an acquisitive company, and they're looking always to buy businesses that make sense to what they're offering. And in our region, there's very, very few businesses like ours that were left. You've got single point solutions that just do maintenance or just do invoicing or just do inspection, and they're too small and they're too narrow, and they're really just, there's no real way for them to bundle together and get it out. So they reached out, I think September 24. And we said, maybe, not sure, whatever. And then we started having conversations again in January 25. And by April, there was a letter of intent. And then we ran a process from April until August. We signed in August, but it was subject to ACCC, and which was then approved. And then, basically, we did the deal. Everything was settled actually on the 1st of October, but we didn't announce it till the 7th because the timing was not going to work for a lot of the stakeholders. But, it was a long process, and it was something that took quite some time. It's like the person you fancy, you see from across the room, and you never really talk to them. And then all of a sudden you have a conversation, and next minute you're married.
It's like dating in the 1800s.
That's right. Exactly.
Like a slow burn.
It was a process, and they knew what they wanted, and we knew what we wanted, and we wanted it to make sense to them, and we wanted what we built to continue on, not just be bought and shelved or bought and destroyed. And we felt that they would be in a position to do it, given we already shared more than 2,000 mutual customers together. So it just made sense. Like, it was a sensical vision,
Yeah.
and that's, to be frank, what we'd planned for years and years before. We knew that we were operating in a niche space, and we knew that the pool of people that were interested in what we had built was minimal. So we had to seek and court in a smart way someone from the industry that was going to understand what we did and understand the value it could bring. And they were the most logical acquirer. We did have quite a few along the way, to be honest, that came in and said, yeah, we're so interested, we're so interested. But a lot of it went nowhere. And a lot of it, we just said, this is not going to work, or they'd make an offer which was not what we were aiming to have. So we just said no. And yeah, we just
Yeah.
ended up here.
Fair play. So you shared with me before that I can talk about this. You're well over 8 figures of recurring revenue, so well over $10 million of
Yeah.
recurring revenue. So what can you tell me about the deal?
Well, it was fun. I can tell you that. On the 1st of October, I was, and this is a funny part. So on the 1st of October, they said, yep, everything's done. I was awake at 5:30 in the morning because I thought, just in case something goes wrong. And there was people in the US, and there was lawyers here, and there was me. And they said, look, we've noticed on your share certificate.
I reckon 2026 is perhaps the most important year of the new millennium. This is powered through artificial intelligence. There's a tectonic shift going on in business right now, and I think you have an opportunity to capitalize on it. I've written a white paper. It's available on my website, joshcomrie.com, under the resources section, completely free of charge. And it'll give you some thinking and some resources and some how-tos in this rapidly changing world. Enjoy.
It says something like $52.14 a share, but it should say $52.14,34728. Like, they were going down to 7 decimal places. I was like, is this where we've come to? Is this where we're at? Anyway, we resolved that because it was just a stupid thing. And they said, at 10 o'clock, the deal's done. Congratulations. At 10 o'clock, money will be in your account. Cool. So I'm logging into the internet banking, 10 o'clock, 10:01, 10:02, nothing there. I'm sitting there going, oh man, is this really happening? What's going on? So I went out, 10:30, still nothing. Like, man, this is scary. I'm writing to lawyers. The money hasn't come. Like, it's supposed to be available right now. And then 10:45, checked again, and it had come in. But it had to go through 6 people to be authorized for the money to leave the account. So the 6th person just authorized it at that time. So that was my favorite part of the deal. I enjoyed that a lot. That was a good part. It sort of lands, and then it's just numbers on the screen. It doesn't really mean anything. It's nice, but whatever. It validates all the hard years, all the lack of sleep, all the pushing to get stuff done. But that's really all it is. It's just a validation of it. But look, it was a good deal all in all. We were happy with it. And someone recently said from MRI to me, when I was having a conversation, he said, all your shareholders should buy you a bottle of scotch every year for the rest of your life because of what happened to the SaaS market in February.
Your timing, right? It was phenomenal. Unbelievable.
I picked the top of the market. And, to be frank, I do feel sorry for a lot of the point solutions in PropTech because I can't see a way that they can ever exit for any reasonable amount of money, and everything that they've raised so far.
Hey, it's not just PropTech, man. I've in the last 6 months, I've had to write off more of my angel investments, so 58.
Oh, wow.
I think I'm up to now, and I've had more fail in the last 6 months than I have done in the entire 24 years before that.
Jesus.
And that's purely because of the AI play and the reality with these businesses that they're like, shit, we don't have a business model anymore. We're
and that's
gone.
the thing. That's, I know what it took to build the platforms that we built. And I still think even with all the AI tools, it's difficult because of all of those workflows, but it's certainly not impossible. And the moat has completely dried up. So everybody is coming in from everywhere. And I say PropTech because I know a lot of the players in the space, and, we looked to acquire a lot of these people as well when we were there, because we were still trying to buy businesses even up until we decided, okay, that's it, letter of intent done. We were still trying to buy businesses, and people had, how can I say it in a nice way, delusions of grandeur in respect of what their valuations were at that point. Someone doing 2 million was saying, oh, well, I think I should get at least 30 million. And it's like, well, you're not profitable.
Wow. In
your
what
root
world?
maybe. But there's another group doing 3 or 4 million. He said he wanted 100 million. So, I always found it quite amusing to hear these stories. And I think to myself now, what do they think? How are they going to get out? How are they ever going to exit? And even if they do, some of the multiples being thrown around now is like 1 to 2 times. What?
Oh, I was just looking at the data
What?
recently, and so the absolute peak was,
Yeah,
2022, for deal doing, and in some sectors that continued on, like your space, for example, was a really good time to do a deal in, 20 late 24,
yeah,
25, but, peak was 2022 across the board, and it was, I think 8.6 was the average, revenue
yeah,
multiple in
that's it.
SaaS. 2 years later, that dropped by 25%. Another 2 years later, that's dropped by 25%. So the average is now about 4.8 multiple of revenue, but that's the
Yep.
average, right? And so there's outliers that are getting, AI,
Oh,
let's
yeah,
call them outliers that are getting 30, 40, 50
exactly.
times. So that means there's companies that are getting one
Yeah,
times
yeah,
revenue. And actually in the
that's
normal
right.
world, that's still
Oh,
not a
oh,
bad thing, right? Because you might not be cutting a profit at all. And so if someone's going to give you $4 million for your $4 million revenue business that's costing you $500,000 to keep the doors open every year, then that's not a bad
yeah,
thing,
the only
right?
problem
So it's a bit of a sobering kind of wake up moment, I
yeah, the
think.
only problem with that is the investors that put in at 5 to 10 times revenue on your raising,
Oh, dude,
they
down
they
rounds.
burnt
Down
burnt
rounds
burnt
suck.
their money, and a lot of the time,
Oh,
they won't go. They'll say if there's any covenants in the agreement or in the shareholder agreement that gives them any power of veto, they'll just say, "No, we're not doing the deal. Sorry."
yeah,
And then the founders it's like
totally,
I've spoken to
totally.
quite a few people like that recently that said, "I just want to get out. I've had enough. I'm burnt out. I thought I was gonna be able to do X, Y, and Z." And then they go and the shareholder agreement doesn't allow for them to do it because they no longer have control. And the other parties go, "No, we're not
Right.
selling," because that crystallizes our loss and they're
Yeah.
a big company. So they're like, "Yeah, you can just do it. Just do another 5 years. Just do another 5 years. You'll be okay."
Yeah. They don't
Nope,
get it,
they
right?
don't care.
Yeah, it's the shitty situation one could
Horrible,
end
mate.
up in. So you went off and wrote a book. So you didn't buy a business, you didn't, start a business, you didn't buy a bar. Tell us about the title of the book and, give us some kind of headline things
Yeah,
about it.
so I'd started writing this book about 2.5 years ago. So I thought, I'll just do it in my spare time. But unfortunately, my spare time was no such thing. Like I don't even know what spare time is when I had the other business. So
Imagine being bored.
yeah,
Like, imagine being
I know,
bored. What is
man.
that even like?
I think before I sold, I'd written about 20 pages over 2.5 years or two and a bit years. And then I really started cranking up the writing because, you know, to use your phrasing, the alcohol and chemicals and the boredom and all that, no interest. I wanted to continue to do stuff. And I'd always had these ideas in my head and I wanted to put this down in writing because I wanted to make to try and give people a difference in their life. So I think they've changed the title, Lessons from a Wealth Building Minimalist, because as I said before, I don't really care about money. I didn't go out and buy a Ferrari or a boat or any of those poxy things that people would assume one does when they have a big exit. I went to Indian that cost $62 and I bought 3 USB-C cables that cost $7. That was the extent.
You
I know.
flash
Yes,
git.
bruh. So that was the extent of it. So basically, it just goes through. It's like how to run your life like a startup because it's all I know, startups. But I've put all these frameworks in because people don't realize, everyone wants to get rich quick. No one has a plan for the long term. So I sort of put down all the things that I'd done from when I was really young, you know, uh, learning things like going and getting cans out of the bin when I was a kid so that we could get food and, putting sand in it so it weighed more so we could make more money. Just, my everyday life tips. For people, they don't do that. They give you money per can now these days. And, sort of the journey of entrepreneurship, all the things that I've done and how I relate that back across to, living your life in a minimalistic way where everybody is broke, but they're all pretending that they're not, and they're standing by rented Lamborghinis and trying to sell you ebooks and courses, and they've never done any hard yards. Everyone wants to do everything quick, get rich quick, lose weight quick, do all these things quick, but it's just time and it's boring, and there's no exciting path about getting rich. Um, it takes a long time unless you're extremely lucky. And if you win lotto, you generally spend it all very quickly and have nothing left at the end of it. But,
Typical.
just like tips and relating it to all of the things in my life that I've had and all of the frameworks that I've built that have set me up for success, whether I had money or I didn't have money. So I just thought I'd continue writing, and it's quite cathartic just getting all these words on a page, and it was painful as well, to be honest, because some days you just sit there and you have the writer's block, and other days you're sitting there going, oh man, I'm just flowing. I've written like 10,000 pages today. That's not true, but I've written a number of pages. So, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was a great experience, and I finished it. And then I thought, oh, I'll just publish it on Kindle. I wrote a kid's book years ago and put that on there, and that was a raging success. Not really, but it's okay. I'll pretend it was. And I thought I'll just do the same thing. But I thought before I do it, I'll send it off to a few publishers. And yeah, one of them picked it up and said, perfect, it's exactly what we want. And so the book is coming out in February 27 in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, the UK, and the US. And it apparently is even going into airports in Australia. So that'll be cool. I'll just duck over to Kingsford Smith here in Sydney and just stand there and with a megaphone.
Buy a couple of boxes to, they're making it sold out.
Sold out
sticker.
soon.
Yeah.
This book's amazing. Oh, you should definitely buy it.
Yes. Can't wait for the speaking tour. That's always the thing that flows on from the back end of it. We're I have an inkling about this next and last question. But I'm not going to cede it. I'll wrap around to it if you don't have this as the answer. But there's an alternate universe. There's another Raf Niesten who's got an incredibly satisfying career, and it's doing something very different from being a entrepreneur of varying forms. What is that career?
Oof, great idea. I think I would love to have been in the media. I think that's my alternate would have been something in media, because obviously I started with the radio station many, many moons ago. And that being said, though, I think I'm slowly turning back towards that because I've got more time on my hands. And I've actually, funnily enough, an exclusive for you and your listeners, I've written a pitch of a TV show that I want to do, that I'm going to pitch in the coming weeks to our good friends at Netflix and others to see if they are interested in my idea, which I think is pretty cool. So in my alternative life, I would have been a media guy, but now I've got the funds to be a media guy because most of the media stuff these days doesn't pay very well. So there you go.
No. And it's all done on a shoestring, and you use generated content, and you can set yourself up on YouTube, and so you can actually go ahead and do it, right? So I can't wait to hear about more about that. I wonder if it might have been stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I did stand-up. I'm still doing it. I went and did another course in it. I did it years and years ago. Love the stand-up comedy. It's great fun. I'd sing in a band. I do all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff, mate, because why not? You only live once, never die wondering. That's my view.
I totally agree with that. And also, you don't know what's going to resonate with you until you try it. And also, you likewise, you don't know what you might excel at until you lean into it. So good on you. Raf, wonderful conversation. Glad that we've got the ability to connect today. Thank you so much for sharing your time, insight, and experience with us. Rafael Niesten, Niesten. People can follow you on LinkedIn, and that way they'll keep up to date with the progress of the book and when it's going to be published. I look forward to following the journey from here,
Thank you,
my
mate.
brother.
Appreciate your time. Cheers, Josh.
Nice one.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you've gotten this far, I reckon you've probably enjoyed it. And there's more available for you in the form of my book, 2 Commas. It's available on my website, joshcomrie.com. I've done an Audible version, which is on amazon.com, and there's a Kindle one kicking around on either of those resources as well. I've had some wonderful, unsolicited feedback from early readers. They describe it as being punchy, clear, helpful, and actionable. What it's not is a guide on how to sell your company. You can go to ChatGPT for that. It's more insightful, experiential-based, and a bit of a blend of psychology, philosophy, and what it takes to build something meaningful and what all that means afterwards. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you grab yourself a copy.